I'm extremely happy to have my next guest joining us for the second time. A man who I'm sure you've seen if you watch the Triple Crown races this year, or really you watch any racing, owner Sal Kumin. Thanks so much for joining us, Sal.
Thank you for having me. Pumped to be here.
You're excited to be in Saratoga.
Oh, I love Saratoga. I got here today. I'm so happy.
When's the first time you came here?
First time ever was Lady Eli's first race.
Really?
Which was...
Irad almost blew that one.
Yeah. Yeah, well, House Silks 4 years ago. It
Really?
was a happy day.
House Silks? Did you have your silks on?
No, we didn't have silks.
Is that right?
We didn't know you had to make silks.
You've come a long way.
Yeah.
Now you've got a lot of silks.
Yeah, now we have too many silks.
Right. I was teasing Sal the other day that it seems like every replay that I watch, I see your silks on some horse or another.
Sometimes in first, sometimes in last,
Right.
but somewhere out there.
If they weren't last, sometimes it wouldn't be fun if you were first. So before we talk about your life in the game, let's talk about Justify. For the three of you unfamiliar, Sal owns a part of Justify. And how did that come about, and how was that run for you?
So we had obviously heard about Justify in Bob's barn. The horse had been training huge, and we'd heard that Bob was extremely high on the horse. So as soon as the horse ran the first time, obviously pretty impressively, Brad Weisbord, who works with me and helps manage
I've
my
heard that.
stable. Yeah, he does a good job. He's over here. He's taking care of my son. So if you need babysitting duties, he can do both.
Wow. Wow, he's full service.
He's full service. So he was able to call Elliot Walden and work out a deal to get us involved, and kind of the rest was history. I mean, it's a pretty short period of time, so you don't feel like you know him that well, but we went on quite a journey that I don't think we're ever going to be able to do again. So it was really special for, my family and friends, and, it's that whole, experience. It's kind of snowballs, right? You kind of show up at the Derby and you win the race, and next thing you know, 10 days later, you go to Baltimore, and then a few weeks later, we had 110 people in New York for the Belmont, and, it was crazy. So really had a, unbelievable time.
And this is, you've been involved. You were involved with three different horses that were in the Derby this year. One of the three, My Boy Jack, who you bought My Boy Jack as a yearling?
Yep, we bought him as a baby, and he was actually the least expensive horse in the Kentucky Derby, $20,000 yearling. And ran fifth, ran a pretty credible fifth. And
is he up here? Is he coming back up here?
Unsure. He ran in the Belmont Derby. He was a little sore, didn't run very well. So Keith's trying to kind of figure him out right now, and hopefully he'll be back in the back half of the year.
And of course, you were involved with Audible. You bought Audible and Justify together, sort of a package deal.
Yep, exactly.
And they're talking about coming back hopefully by the end of the year with him?
Yeah, they gave him a little bit of time. I think he hopefully, will be a Pegasus horse later in the year. So we'll,
Is there going to be a Pegasus next year?
I hope so.
Well, if Audible, you'll certainly hope so, right?
I definitely hope so.
Well, actually, you were involved briefly with the first Pegasus, but you were one of the smart ones. You got out.
That was one of my better moves. Yeah, we we sort of did the math, and it's great for racing, and I hope it continues. But the math was kind of hard to make it work, so we punted our spot, I guess you call it.
Yeah, I could go on a long diatribe about the Pegasus and the phony earnings, the Pegasus, but I want to have the Travers charge $25 million to run the Travers. But give everybody back $24,950,000 and call it $250 million race. Yeah. Is the Jockey Club going to then recognize earnings of 24.9 for every horse that runs in it?
I'm going to go with no.
Yeah, so it's just at one point you just start to argue about numbers. It's funny, we were talking about it, and we'll talk about it a little bit with buying the pieces. And I know there's a lot of people, especially in cyberspace, where people are very critical of things, saying they're not running Audible. The same connections are involved with Audible. They're keeping them out. To me, if you owned the whole horse, why would you run a horse, especially a horse going for the Triple Crown? Why would you try to beat that horse in the Belmont Stakes?
Yeah, it's tricky, right? That was a tricky one because it was the exact same ownership for both horses, and the horse was clearly, going for the Triple Crown. Luckily, we didn't really have to make this decision because Audible just wasn't quite 100%. I'm not sure if we would have run him or if we wouldn't have. It frankly wouldn't have been my decision. It would have been, Elliot Walden's decision from WinStar as the majority owner. But I find myself frequently in positions where we're running, multiple horses that we own in the same races. We'll have Sunday, Monomoy Girl and Midnight Bisou will run against each other in the coaching club. They'll both be the two favorites in the race.
It's going to be a great matchup.
Oh, I can't wait.
Going to be one of the best matchups of the whole meet.
Yeah, it should be a great race. Both horses are doing great, and But that's a hard race, right? I mean, Monomoy Girl is probably my favorite horse that I own right now.
And you bought her as a yearling, right?
We bought her as a baby, and
Liz Crow picked her out?
Liz Crow picked her out. It was the first ticket that Liz signed, and she's done an amazing job for us as Brad's partner. And, that's Brad Cox's first Grade 1 win, which is an amazing thing to be part of, and just to see how much he cares about this horse and Liz, and it's just been a great journey. So, and then Midnight Bisou is very different, right? We bought into the horse much later in her career, and, they end up in the same race, and they're the two favorites, and you gotta, hope that one of them wins and the other one runs well, and it's good for the sport. You can't really keep them apart.
No, it's great for the sport, and I think it's an answer to people who suggest that you're going to take a piece, and we were talking about it before. Now, you could decide, because you are a principal owner of Monomoy Girl. You have nothing, you can't decide where Midnight Bisou runs.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, there'd be no way. I mean, look, they listen, and you have to, you kind of figure out who your partner's going to be before, and if there's someone that's going to listen to you, or someone that says, listen, you're a partner, and you don't own the majority, so we don't really care what you have to say, and that happens sometimes too. But with Monomoy Girl, we obviously are involved enough that we're helping make decisions with Brad, and they just ended in the same spot, and that's part of the game.
Well, it's an interesting situation, because if Monomoy Girl is to win this race, that'll be 4 straight Grade 1s, and at this point, it's virtually impossible for her not to win the Eclipse. Whereas if Midnight Bisou wins, they're on relatively even footage. I would say that Monomoy Girl's in front of her, but it's to the point where Midnight Bisou could win the championship away from her.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think if Monomoy Girl wins this race, I think she kind of locks it up, or at least in my opinion.
4 straight Grade 1s.
Yep.
I mean,
and she would have beaten her twice head to head. If Bisou wins this race, I think, and then comes back and wins the Alabama, because she will run most likely, and Monomoy Girl won't, just 1.25 miles, probably not the right distance. Now you're talking about a much, much closer race, and we'll have to see what happens in the Cotillion and the Breeders' Cup to kind of break the tie as the year goes on.
And it's funny, you can talk to Ed Stanko, who's here, and Ed owned Princess of Silmar, and she looked like, how could she possibly not be the 3-year-old champion, right? And then he takes a risk. He ships her out to California, and she finishes behind Beholder in the Breeders' Cup and doesn't become 3-year-old champ. But all because Ed was a sporting guy, right, and shipped her out there. Yeah. So it doesn't always work out perfectly. But it'll be an exciting matchup between those two. Now, we were talking before, and we're going to take a break in a minute, and Sal will stay with us. But Lady Eli was not your first horse, but she was one of the first horses you ever
one
bought.
of the first 3. We ended up buying 3 horses together that first year at a 2-year-old sale, and that was one of them. So we just got super, super lucky at the beginning. And, look, at the beginning, it can go either way. When you find a horse like that at the beginning and you get lucky, it helps, right? You get to go on a journey. You obviously, do well financially, which allows you to take some more risk. And, that was really what got me hooked on racing. I mean, we bought that horse, I didn't know, what a filly was, what a colt. Well, I mean, I knew nothing.
So 4 years later, you find yourself in this situation with all these horses. So how exactly did it come about that you got involved in buying a piece?
Sure. So I have a good friend of mine named Jay Hanley, who is a builder, and he actually built my house. And we had gotten to become good friends. And Jay was from up close to here in Saratoga, and he had one horse that was with Chad Brown. He had met Chad, a few years before, when he had kind of gone out on his own. And he came up to me one day and said, look, I really think you'll like the sport. There's, a competitive part of it, and there's kind of a deal part of it, and I think you'll love the animals, and, you spend a lot of time with your family. I think your kids will like it. So we, put a little money in. We grabbed 2 other friends. There were 4 of us, and we met Chad, and we loved him, and we basically bought a handful of horses, and kind of it's been... It's been a little bit different since.
We're gonna have to take a quick break, but we'll come back. I want to talk to you. I mean, with your partnerships, and we'll talk about the different partnerships you've had. You have, like you being brought in the game, you've introduced an enormous amount of people to the sport.
I have, yeah. Listen, I have trouble doing things in moderation, as my wife would say, and
others would say that too.
It's probably true. And I love it, and the sport's incredible. Most of you here probably have a pretty good understanding of what it's like, and it's just been unbelievable to be able to share it with friends of mine that have never been around it before, and bringing them to races and. Bringing them to the morning and cruising around in a golf cart and seeing, the jockeys and the trainers and seeing it's magical. And it's been great to share it with a bunch of people. I feel like we've brought a lot of new owners into the game, and it's awesome.
We'll talk about it more, but we do have to take a break. So stay with us as we come right back, and Sal Kumin will be with us when we come back at the Post Live, brought to you Thanks for staying with us. Sal Kumin is still with us here. And when we went to break, Sal, you were talking a bit about introducing people to the game and bringing people in. How many different partnerships do you have? I know there's Mad Cat, there's Head of Plains, there's Sheep Pond. That's the original one. That was the Lady Eli one,
yeah,
right?
Lady Eli one. We got Great Point.
Great Point.
We've got Monomoy.
Monomoy.
Yeah, those are really the 5. But it's mostly Head of Plains and Madigan at this point are where probably 85% of the horses are.
And how many different people are involved in your partnerships? All of them combined?
All of them are pretty small and mostly the same people. Monomoy is a little bit bigger, but most of them are between 2 and 4 people. And really the same 2 to 4 of us.
Now, obviously, I'm sure some of them had been involved in the game beforehand, but have been a number of them been people who hadn't been involved in the game?
Almost all of them are new, frankly. Monomoy has a couple guys you know that wanted to buy some yearlings, which is where we bought Monomoy Girl and My Boy Jack. But most of them are sort of 3 or 4 of us that all got into the game really at the same time, which is great.
And it must be fun. I mean, it must, obviously, we see the successes. Of course, we don't see the horses that don't run or, I mean, it's hard and you get the puzzle, but obviously you've had enormous success, and not just with the horses you've bought into.
Yeah, it's been a really, really good run. I mean, this year has been, frankly, spectacular, and you kind of look at the back half of the year and just hope to get lucky once in a while, because it's been, I feel like we've sort of used most of our luck in the first half of the year, but it's great. I mean, you're winning with your friends, and I can't think of anything that's really much more fun than that.
And it's funny with Justify. I was talking about it with a friend the other day. There's a part of it because you won't be involved in the breeding end with Justify, right?
Correct.
Just for racing.
Correct.
You might have been better off if he hadn't won the Belmont, or he probably wouldn't have run anyway, right?
Yeah,
he does seem to have a problem.
Listen, I mean, he was going to run in the Haskell. I mean, I don't, when he shipped back to California, he was set to run in the Haskell, and there was a schedule set for him, and unfortunately, he just hasn't been 100% since. And hopefully he'll run again. We'll have to see what happens. But as you know, to run in the Breeders' Cup, the timeline starts to get tighter and tighter, and we're kind of waiting to see what they come back and say, and we're hopeful, but we'll have to see.
And now you can just root for your friend Chad to win with good magic. You don't have to root against him, beat him. Keep beating him.
Look, I love Chad. I love Bob Edwards. I'd be happy if those guys won the Haskell. It'd be great.
And how many different trainers do you have horses with? I mean, obviously you started with Chad, and probably more horses with Chad Crown than anybody else.
Yeah,
right?
a lot, actually. I mean, a lot. There's probably only a handful that we have a decent amount of horses with. I mean, Chad would be our main trainer. We've got a lot of horses with Brad Cox now, who's done a great job for us.
Brad does a terrific job.
Terrific. A lot of horses with Keith DeSormo in California. We've started buying more horses with Phil D'Amato out in California, who's done a really nice job for us. Graham Motion, another guy's done a great job for us. We have a bunch of horses with him. So, and then we have, just a handful with lots of people. I mean, we were super lucky a few weeks ago to win the Belmont Derby with Jonathan Thomas with Catholic Boy, and that was
he's very good. We're gonna have him on the show.
He's great. You
Jonathan's
got to get him.
great,
He's terrific, and he's actually one of those guys that I think has all the tools to be kind of, I don't want to call it the next Chad Brown, but the next big trainer. I mean, he's kind of done everything, worked for some great people. He understands rehab. He can talk. He knows where to place horses. He's really terrific, and he's a great, great, hardworking guy. So that was great. I mean, being part of some of these, let's call them smaller trainers, just in terms of their numbers, and winning big races with those guys. I mean, being part of Mind Your Biscuits with Chad Summers.
We'll be running in the Whitney.
Yeah, running the Whitney.
Your dad went over to Dubai, right?
My dad
for the last
did,
time?
yeah.
You didn't go, but your dad went, right?
I couldn't go. I had to work, which this whole work thing is so overrated. And so my dad really wanted to go to Dubai, so I set him up to go, and he went and had dinner with Chad Summers both nights, and had a great time, and we won the race. So it was awesome. But some of those guys, sharing moments like that with smaller up and coming trainers when they kind of have their first big breakout win. It's unbelievable. I mean, being part of that is really tremendous.
And your son is here. One of your kids is here right now.
There he is, my middle guy.
How does it work with the kids? They like coming to the track?
They love it. Jax, do you like coming to the track? There he goes.
Excited for opening day tomorrow?
That's my middle child. He's 8.
Now, all the kids go to all the Triple Crown races? Did they come?
They went to 2 of the 3. We couldn't get them to Baltimore, but they were there for the first and the last.
Because you went to college in Baltimore and you just wanted to hang out with your college friends down there?
My college buddies. He knows too much. This guy knows too much. But yeah, no, my kids love it. My kids are little. They're 7, 8, and 9. And so, my youngest son's coming in tomorrow, and they'll be up here a lot this summer, and they love it. Their mom doesn't love it quite as much as their dad and the kids.
Shocking.
But we're working on her.
Yeah. Well, she comes some.
No, she comes. She
Yeah.
comes. The Triple Crown was nice. It was helpful.
I'm sure the Triple Crown. Yes, it's winning big ones
it
like
was
that.
helpful
I'm
to
sure it
break her
worked
in a
out. Well,
little
she comes to Saratoga somewhat.
Yep. No, she'll come a couple times.
Well, Sal, we appreciate you taking some time to join us here at the Post Live.
My pleasure.
Sal Kumin,
Thanks for having me.
we'll be seeing him in the winner's circle.
I hope.
Well, you got a good shot to be there with somebody on Sunday.